Well, that one feels like a punch in the nuts. And where do you start, the coach or the quarterback? We could do this all day, honestly. I lean Young. I think he had one-on-one opportunities over the top. The intermediate routes as well. I think he had some in-breaking routes. I think he had receivers one-on-one. And instead, he looked rushed. There's no progression. He looked timid and reverted into, honestly, the 2023 version of himself. He looked rushed. And I don't think the Niners' pass rush was really getting there. They blew past Aquanu a couple times. But I think for the most part, Young had opportunities downfield. Canales agrees with that. It's still impossible not to look at Canales and not blame him. I don't know how you could look at the coach who ran the ball 6 times in the first half to players other than Bryce Young. So Bryce Young had 3 scrambles. They had 9 carries going into half. I think they were averaging like over 5 yards per carry. It was unbelievable. Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle had 6 carries. 6 freaking carries. And we'll talk about the play at the goal line, which I think was unbelievable. The amount of people that texted me after that play going, what are they doing? 1st and goal from the 1. And you take the quarterback you haven't trusted really since you've gotten here. And you're going to put the ball in Bryce Young's hands, 1st and goal from the 1? Just so hot and cold, it doesn't even make sense. Run the ball with Rico Dowdle. You have one of the best running backs in football, a good offensive line that's been consistent all year. You put the ball in Bryce Young's hands? Canales loved the play call. I called it a great call. We'll talk about that again in a minute. But to me, I come out of this game going, is Canales over his head? And again, I'm going to put blame on the quarterback in a few minutes here, but bear with me. You have receivers who are not on the same page with the quarterback. Receivers who had costly mistakes all day. Mitchell Evans had a big penalty in the second half. Leads to 3rd and 6. You can't convert. The tight ends were nowhere to be seen. The receivers aren't on the same page with the quarterback. Canales says they're running the routes too deep, which I think was true. There were some instances where there was a throw to be made, but Coker, or he's the one I noticed, T-Mac a couple of times, they're just too deep, not looking for the ball. And maybe Young just has to throw it to a spot and trust the guys there. I don't know. Either way, they cut quicker. There's a play to be had. And maybe Young still checks it down, because that's what he did today. He just checked it down and looked scared, particularly in the first half. But at least give the guy a shot. And Canales, who's supposed to be this receivers coach, I would think at this point in the season, he would have that cleaned up. You would think at this point in the season, you wouldn't be getting a dud from T-Mac, who just had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Falcons. You would think at this point in the season, the receivers and quarterback would be on the same page. And I have to imagine the coach can get a little bit of it. Again, that falls on the quarterback. But Canales should be helping the quarterback. And the fact that they're still not on the same page, Young still, as much as Young blamed himself after the game and put it all on himself, he clearly doesn't love the play calling. The coach and quarterback aren't on the same page, and that's because Canales has an owner breathing down his neck who is desperate to win, which is good for me and you. It's good that Tepper wants to win. It's good that Tepper's a little bit anxious and feels the heat from the media. But at the same time, you have Canales in here who's got a seat at the table in the front office. He's supposed to be developing this receiving core. He's supposed to be on the same page with the quarterback. He's calling all the plays. And it's just his list of responsibilities. He's not Superman. A second-year head coach with 1 year of coordinator experience, he can't be Superman at this point in time. And maybe eventually he becomes that. And you're honestly in a good place with Canales, I think. I think you've seen growth. I think he's been good in the players that he has brought in. A big reason they brought in Canales was because he's on the same page as Dan Morgan. That's been the case since he's gotten here. So I'm not blaming Canales in the big picture, per se. But I think today you go into half with 6 carries to your 2 best players on the field on offense on Monday night. Chew Barber and Rico Dowdle, 6 effing carries. That is just, I can't even put it into words. There's no excuse for that. There's zero excuse. Meanwhile, on the other side, Christian McCaffrey, I didn't realize it to this game. I want to give this take quick before we go into Canales' clips. For the first time, I saw the anger that McCaffrey had after that trade. And I think the broadcast team said it. They're like, this guy doesn't want to come out of the game right now. Pretty sure they opened that first drive with 9 touches to McCaffrey. Finished the game with 32 touches, 141 yards. And this is a guy who's going to be pivotal to their postseason success if they're able to outduel the Lions, whoever else is in the hunt. They have a tough stretch late in the season. McCaffrey doesn't care. He goes, give me the ball. I want to run these guys over. And he might as well give a middle finger to that owner's box. And I know this entire time it's been spun as, well, McCaffrey didn't get to say bye to his friends. He knew he was getting traded. They knew that weeks before. He knew that he was the guy that was disposable, that it wasn't Brian Burns, it wasn't DJ Moore. Those guys were untouchable, and Moore later got traded, but at that point in the season, he was the guy they were willing to move on from. And I think that pisses him off. I think he is the leading rusher at that time in the season, and he goes, you're going to effing trade me? Are you serious? Like, what a joke. I think that's how he feels. And I know it's coming off as like, oh, I didn't get to say bye to Derek Brown and my friends here. I think he's just saying that. I think he is upset with how the whole situation ended. I think he feels humiliated by the team. And you could see it clear as day. He was running with some extra vengeance on Monday night. Meanwhile, the Panthers aren't running the ball, which I think is the main criticism of Canales' night. Yes, you can get on him for the play calling, but I think it's mostly the run. Maybe you want to see Young drop back more. I honestly don't think that makes a big difference. I think he hits more big plays when he drops back. He also turns the ball over more when he does that, and he did it tonight. Yes, there was a holding call on the Niners defensive back that wasn't called. But generally this whole season, I think 4 of 6 interceptions. I did the math last week. The vast majority of turnovers come from the dropbacks, come from the shotgun. So I'm not doing that whole thing again. Let's talk about why the hell Dave Canales didn't run the ball from the 1-yard line on 1st and goal. Here's the coach.
Yeah, it was a great action. You know, he had Mitch open in the back half, and there's an option he could take off and run it into the front pylon. You know, he saw Mitch, and, you know, right when he turns back in, they had a defender on the edge who popped out and intercepted it. You know, at that time, he made a great play on the ball. But, you know, we've been running the ball there in that situation, and felt like we could, get another chance to run at it if we didn't get the completion on that roll. But I like the call. You know, it was an aggressive call, a play action that we had opportunities on, and unfortunately came out with an interception.
If they could have the first half back and they just ran single back sets and just ran it the entire half, I honestly think they would have outscored the Niners. I genuinely believe that. You have Purdy just tossing the ball to ghosts out there. I watched the Manning cast for like 2 minutes, and Manning goes, this reminds me of my 6 interception game as a rookie. That's how bad Brock Purdy was playing. Your defense was dynamite. J.C. Horn, unfortunately, had the concussion symptoms that sidelined him. You lost Corey Thornton, lost A'Shawn Robinson. Some big injuries that I honestly think your defense was resilient to. I think Charles was even out for a few plays there, or some time. I have to look back at my notes. But your defense was awesome all game. Yet you're set up at the 1 effing yard line, 1st and goal. After J.C. Horn turns it over again, and you go play action, you put the ball in the hands of your quarterback that you don't, the criticism of Canales is he doesn't trust Young, which I think is a really complex statement. You're going to give it to the quarterback on 1st and goal from the 1? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe that play call on 3rd and goal after Dowdle gets stuffed twice. You don't even give Dowdle a chance. Dowdle, statistically, your best player on offense. You don't even give him a chance in the first half, generally. First and goal from the 1, and you don't run to Dowdle? Maybe you just never kick the Seahawks out of these coaches. Maybe Dave Canales, like Pete Carroll, because Pete Carroll has done dumb stuff like that before. Maybe Canales just can't get that beaten out of him. He was there in Seattle running the ball, from the 2? You have Marshawn Lynch and you don't run it? Well, Canales did the same exact effing thing tonight on a live broadcast on national television. I think that was one of the dumber decisions he's made all year. And I think he's had some moments like this. Again, it goes back to this idea that Canales is in over his head. And if it were just Canales, the OC, if it were just Canales, the receivers coach, it would work well. I think the product would be a lot different. I think the Panthers are trying to build this system where Canales has a lot of power. He has a seat in the front office. He's the culture leader. He's the play caller. He's everything. And like a tree, it's still planting its roots. And for that reason, I think you get some lapses mentally. Where at the end of the first half against Atlanta, he's calling a timeout. Meanwhile, Bijan Robinson, I think, has 100 yards at the time. He's running all over you. He calls a timeout and lets the Falcons run the ball again, and Robinson almost rips it off for a touchdown. If Morig's not there to push him out of bounds, it's literally a touchdown. And you probably don't win that game because of that play. I think the 57-yard field goal was questionable. Young had a little bit of rhythm in the second half for a brief moment there. They go field goal. They'd rather kick 57 yards with a rookie kicker than go for it on 4th and 6, I think it was. Last week, or it was this week rather, he goes for 2 for no reason. That could have bit you in the ass. Again, why are you trusting the quarterback in these dumb one-off situations? First and goal from the 1, you trust the quarterback. You're going to go for 2 instead of taking the points. In fact, you take the points off the board to go for 2 with the quarterback you don't trust. Like, make it make sense, some of these things for him. Canales went on to say in his press conference later, I didn't pull the clip, this is the reason they don't run the ball, evidently. According to him, this is why they don't run the ball. We didn't come away with a lot of passes we had to make to get the run game to happen. So 6 carries in the first half is the result of Bryce Young not throwing the ball. And I do think, ultimately, this was a pass-heavy game plan. I think they went in with the assumption that the Niners, like the Falcons, like the Saints, were going to load the box, and they did. They were unique with Malik Mustafa, who I think had an amazing game. Confused Young all day. So they went in it with the idea that, well, they don't take Bryce Young's 448-yard game seriously. They're going to challenge us over the top. They're going to force us to throw it over the top, give us one-on-one opportunities, and the quarterback's not going to come away with anything. Okay. I mean, that's true. Does that mean you can't open the game with running the ball? That you can't take advantage of these weak linebackers? That you can't challenge the Niners? That this offensive line that's been the strength of this team, that has been running teams over, literally running teams over, bulldozing all season, you're not even going to give Dowdle or Hubbard a chance in the first half because Young can't throw the ball? That's your reasoning? I think that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. There is no excuse in the world for Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle having 6 carries in the first half. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. It really is unbelievable. This is another criticism of Dave Canales. I honestly don't necessarily agree with this, but they're getting on Dave for not dropping Bryce Young back. Way too many rollouts. I honestly think that's just sprinkles on the sundae. Honestly, I think that has less to do with it. Here's Dave Canales on the struggles at quarterback and why Bryce Young struggled on Monday night.
I just felt like building off of, what happened last week and just taking a step forward with the pass game. I saw some opportunities. We were protecting pretty well as far as pass protection goes, and it just felt like we just didn't come away with our opportunities consistently enough early on. And then in the second half, at a certain point when the score becomes what it is, it's like, okay, we're in a 2-score game. We got to move it a little bit here and throw the ball around, and had some measure of success that way. But and the run game seemed to be hitting pretty good, but I was trying to take advantage of it. They were playing some loaded boxes that did a good job with their disguise in some of those areas too.
Pass protection was good, Canales says. Do you agree? I think Ekwonu got blown by a couple times by those edge rushers. Bryce Huff is the one you remember. He had to hold him to pretty much prevent him from killing Bryce Young. Honestly, like he was coming in hot and he had to hold him. I do think it was generally pretty good. I think it was more a product of Young looking rushed. Young looking rushed. I think the timing was completely off. And I watched the All 2022. I think Young had opportunities all day. I agree with Canales. There was one play that stood out to me. It was a second drive. They go play action, and it's completely covered underneath. They did a great job covering it underneath. He has Tremaine one-on-one over the top, and Young he rolls out, and he has time to make a throw. Tremaine does an amazing job. He breaks off his route, comes back to the ball, has a decent amount of separation. If Young let him back inside and zip that in, Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, May, they all make that throw. It's a touchdown. So you're not even getting into that situation. I think that was where he threw the interception from the 1. I think it was that same drive. You're not even getting into that situation. It's just a touchdown, but he can't make the throw. And I think generally there were opportunities like that all game. And people go, well, they're not letting Bryce cook. They're not letting him cook. There's no receivers downfield. Like, why don't they just let him cook? Why are they running screen passes all game? Why don't they let Bryce cook? I think that's false, honestly. I think there are receivers downfield. They are one-on-one. Yes, it's NFL open. Yes, you have Jalen Coker and Tetairoa McMillan who aren't Antonio Brown getting 10 yards of separation. But ultimately, you can't bank on going against corners like Natrone Brooks, who the Falcons had last Sunday. You're not going to be getting 5 yards of separation. It's not going to consistently happen. Xavier Legette running 10 yards past Natrone Brooks and getting a touchdown. Maybe at Alabama that happens. It doesn't happen in the NFL. And there's going to be tight throwing windows. And ultimately, Young needs to take a leap of faith. And I think some of it is fear. I think this do right more mantra where I think Canales really drills it in to Young. Like, hey, don't throw picks. Don't. Because we're going to run the ball, which they didn't run the ball, so you blame Canales there. But don't throw picks, Bryce. Don't throw picks. And they beat it into him. And they sit him on the armchair and they brainwash him into thinking it's like the worst thing in the world to throw it downfield. And he looks scared. He looks scared. And I think ultimately it's such a disarray between the coach and quarterback. I think Canales wants him to. He's saying it there. He should have gone over the top. He should have taken advantage of the one-on-one opportunities. Why didn't he? He's scared. He's scared to throw into a tight window. He's scared to give Jalen Coker a chance. He's scared to throw to T-Mac a lot of the time in the first half in the intermediate areas and deep over the top. He's scared to do it. He's scared. And I think expecting T-Mac and Coker to get 5 yards of separation, it's not going to happen. Those are big-bodied receivers. I think Coker, he's only 6'1", but he's thick. And I think with Coker, it's like you just give him a chance. Let him box out a guy. T-Mac, the catch radius. They were talking about his separation issues at Arizona, where he literally probably had 20 yards of separation against some of those corners. Doesn't mean T-Mac's not a really awesome receiver. It's just that's not his style. He's not Antonio Brown blowing 20 yards past these guys. He's not doing that. And ultimately, Young looks timid. He's running around. He's scrambling when there's throws to be made. Instead of throwing it 12, 15 yards down the field, he's scrambling for a gain of 5. Instead of maybe waiting a couple seconds in the pocket, getting a feel on the blitz, knowing where the pressure is, knowing how much time he has. He looks rushed. He looks sped up. Instead of waiting a half second less for Coker to in-break and getting the ball out, he's rushing through his progressions and dumping it off to Hubbard, and it's a loss of 5 in the red zone. That's what happened. I do want to make sure there is blame on the receivers, though, because I don't think McMillan and Coker were on the same page with the quarterback, whether it's the depth of the route, which Canales called an issue. There were 2 instances where McMillan went inside, Young went outside, similar thing with Coker, and the ball is just away from everyone. Luckily, there were no defenders over there. Some of that's the receivers. I think some of it's Young. Some of it's Canales. Like, why aren't these guys on the same page? It's a young developmental core. Is Canales in over his head? Is he distracted by other things? Is he doing too much? Is that why the quarterback and receivers are not on the same page at this stage in the season? Or is some of that on Young? Young just needs to button it up. I definitely think there is opportunity to blame the receivers, though. And McMillan, he had a rough game. That big drop on 3rd down, I think that killed him. He normally makes that catch as early in the game. I think the Niners wore the Panthers down. They killed them in time of possession. It was like 37 minutes to 23 minutes. Niners winning time of possession, which has been a strength of the Panthers. And yes, you can say, well, they should have ran the ball more. I've talked about that half this show. Some of it is they just couldn't move the chains. And McMillan's dropping the ball, or there was that little slant route to McMillan where I think he can make those catches. McMillan one-on-one on a slant, that's a play he comes away with on 3rd and short. More often than not, I think he makes that play. Well, they didn't convert, and now you have the defense who is getting destroyed. They're on the field having to tackle McCaffrey. The Niners are just, as much as Purdy is trying to ruin their chances at winning, they are moving the ball. They are playing aggressive. They are playing a violent brand of football, exhausting the Panthers defense to the point where bodies are dropping. And then the offense comes back out and lays a dud. The offense comes back out and gives the ball right back to the Niners. And it was amazing to me how many chances they gave you to win that game. 3 terrible interceptions for Brock Purdy. J.C. Horn made a really good play on the 3rd one, where he literally ran across the field and read the quarterback and picked the ball off. You have McCaffrey even fumbling in the first half. There were so many opportunities for this Panthers team, and nothing worked. Nothing. Let's talk about this. Dave Canales brings it home. Here's Dave Canales on the play calls on Monday night.
It's just the full group execution and just making sure we're on the same page with the calls that are coming in and out. The timing and rhythm, making sure he's getting his throws off the right way, making sure guys are running the right routes at the right depth. Those are all the things that, we're just hammering on as a group, and we have to continue to regroup quickly, this week and get to the bottom of the execution part of it.
So Canales brings it on. Play call still an issue. Still not on the same page with the quarterback. And the execution, obviously, Young missed a ton of opportunities. There were opportunities to be had. But you would think they'd be on the same page at this stage in the season. And Canales names it there. The decision-making, the timing, the rhythm. These are the things that helped Young against the Falcons, and they were nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found on Monday night. To the point where Malik Mustafa, who is not as good as Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates is a great safety. Mustafa's good. He's promising. He looks like a good player. But he's not Jesse Bates. He's owning Bryce Young. And it was how they deployed him. I think Young was confused all day by how they used number 6. If you look at the tape, there were times where he's creeping in and then he darts back. And Mustafa goes after the game. I'm exhausted. But it was how they deployed him. I think they confused the hell out of Young. I think there were times where Young could have maybe checked into a run. There were times where Young just had no idea what Mustafa was going to do. So credit to Robert Saleh. He knew how to deploy Mustafa. But I also think Young, who was able to own Jesse Bates last week, he knew what Bates was going to do. Why is he so confused by Mustafa? Like, why is Mustafa his kryptonite? Coming off a 448-yard passing game, the Niners, who are banged up, but used the resources they had to take away everything underneath and stop the run. Well, now it's this guy. It's okay. They have one deep safety, and then Mustafa's creeping in. What's he going to do? Why does that confuse Young? You have receivers running downfield who are one-on-one and they're open. Why can't you get the ball out there? Some of that is the depth of the route, is Canales names. It's like the receivers aren't looking for the ball, and Young isn't going to throw it to the spot or whatever. Okay, I get that. Why wasn't Young able to pick apart this secondary? He was so easily able to do it against the Falcons. And look, a lot of it comes down to not having Natrone Brooks out there, not getting 15 yards of separation from your receivers. And maybe that's just the only story there. I just think that Mustafa clearly confused Young, disrupted the timing. Young was confused from the snap. And it's tough to have faith in this thing long term as they prepare for the Los Angeles Rams, who have a way better defense than the Niners. And maybe the inconsistency is the inconsistency, and there's some adjustments they make. I don't know how much you're going to get. Like, I think this offense has peaked. Honestly. Like, how much more are they going to get? I think they could get a lot more from the receivers still. I think the receivers are still young and inconsistent and raw. But the quarterback position specifically, how much more juice can you squeeze from that lemon? I'm curious to see. And nothing would hit harder than a Young revival game against the Rams, believe me. It's tough to see it happening. But, I mean, maybe there is something there. And I don't know how on earth they lost this game. To have 3 points off 3 interceptions. Purdy looked awful. Purdy was so bad they did everything to keep the ball out of his hands in the second half. There were some decent throws to Kittle, but it's like Shanahan goes, you know what? I'm done with this effing guy. I'm surprised they didn't put in Mac Jones at some point. But wow, a tough game, a tough one. I don't know how they didn't come away with a win. They should have ran more. We blame the coach. We blame the quarterback, as we usually do. Hopefully we don't have to do it again next week. I want it to work out. I want it to work, but oh man, that tape was not fun to watch. Well, this is The Tone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have so much more coming for you. Have an amazing Thanksgiving. Be grateful. I'm grateful for everyone who listens to this amazing program. I couldn't do it without you. Couldn't do it without everyone who supports The Tone. This is The Tone. Thank you so much for tuning in.